My sister Haley is turning 30 this weekend, and of course, we're pulling out all the stops. And I want to show y'all all the little details that I put together for this wonderful wine tasting that gives elegance but also education. And this all started where all great party ideas start, on Pinterest. I wanted just a couple little references, but I really wanted to make this my own. And this was kind of the inspo girls' night wine tasting at home. But I wanted to include little details that really said, "This is my sister," that made it unique to her. She's very elegant, she's very luxurious. So we wanted to pull that together. The palette was candles, black, white, and red, a little bit of class, a little saucy, and a whole lot of fun. I started by making some of the custom elements of the party, which are the little details that make people really go, "Wow, this is awesome." The theme for the party was called Age to Perfection, and this little newspaper was just a little overview of why we decided to do this theme, a little about my sister, and a little bit about how this all tied together for a great 30th birthday party. There are little details in the newspaper, like my sister's favorite number and other small things that I knew only she would see, which are extra things that make your guest of honor feel incredibly special. I also wanted everyone to have these custom menus so they could kind of know the flow for the night, and I wanted something that spoke to the theme, but also individually to my sister. She loves planes, specifically Cessna planes. So I traced over one and put it all in the background, added the little bow, and then cut these out, layered these on the table, and it just made it extra special. And it also created a good flow for the evening. Now, if you remember back to our inspo board, right there in the middle is a little paper placemat that I saw in a lot of inspo pics on Pinterest, and I really thought that was super easy to recreate because I've got a fat roll of craft paper just itching to be turned into things. I use this for all kinds of stuff. It's actually like the paper drop cloth that you can buy at Home Depot, so it's much thicker than craft paper, which can be good, can be awful. For this instance, it was good and it also was bad. I started by cutting these into the individual sizes. I didn't want them too big because I knew that we were going to have the other stationery that also needed to go on the table. But this paper is incredibly thick. And because I've had this roll since I think 2019, it also stays rolled a lot. So after I cut these out, I wanted to weigh them down with a bunch of my cookbooks, and I left them like that for probably around 36 hours, and they were still turning up in the corners. So, what I did was I lightly, very lightly sprayed them with this anti wrinkle spray I have. I know that was probably a terrible idea, but it worked. And I would recommend just spraying a little bit of water on them, or if you want to do wrinkle spray, go nuts. But this just helped flatten them out so they laid much nicer on the table, so that way I could actually draw on them. And after I drew all 6 circles, I did try out a couple different fonts on this first one. I wanted to try thick, thin, regular text, swirly text. We ended up just settling on this bottom one because it was simple, easy to read. And then I just went over on each placemat and continued the same font with each of the tasting elements that was going to be on here. And honestly, turned out so cute. These were perfect on the table. To keep the tasting from turning into chaos on empty stomachs, I prepped most of the food at home. The menu consisted of my bolognese lasagna, a garlic and parmesan polenta, and some balsamic roasted veggies. I cannot stress to you enough how heavy this lasagna was. It ended up being 6 layers, which I love on a lasagna, but it weighed the weight of a small child. With this rich of a menu, I needed a fresh element to help break it up a little bit, and I also wanted to do something very seasonal. So I did this kind of colorful roasted veggie moment. I kept the seasoning really minimal: balsamic vinegar, oil, salt, pep, and garlic powder, something that everyone would enjoy. If you or a loved one is having a big birthday, you are legally obligated to make them a delicious fresh tiramisu, okay? Because it's actually incredibly simple once you get the hang of making whatever the kind of like mixture of mascarpone cheese is. And you can make tiramisu a bunch of different ways. I've only ever made it this way. I do want to try making it a different way at some point, but when you're hosting an event is not the time. Another reason I decided to make these things for the party was because of how much time it would save me day of. This tiramisu needs to sit for at least 24 hours, so I made it the day before. The same thing with the lasagna. I could cut up the veggies and let those sit in the balsamic, and it would just add more flavor. It saved me so much time and energy. It also made all the flavors that much better. Okay, so before anyone gets here, I want to walk you through the wines I picked for tonight's tasting, and more importantly, why I picked these wines. All right, let's start with the actual wines that we're going to do for the tasting. First one we're going to talk about is this Primitivo from Puglia. You pronounce it Puglia, Puglia. I looked this up on the internet mainly because I'm also reading this book about olive oil, and a lot of the book takes place in Puglia. And I was reading it so much in the book, I needed to know how to pronounce it in my brain. You'll notice here on the bottle, it also says appassimento. That's like a style of winemaking. And what that means is that before the grapes are crushed to make the wine, they are dried a little bit. And so think about like if you could suck the water out of a vegetable, it brings out that flavor a lot more. And that's basically what this does. It makes it a really bold, rich wine. And I picked this because this group, to my understanding, most of these people are more red forward. So we wanted something more red facing. If our favorites are Cabernets, we're going to go a little outside of Cabernet. And this is kind of pushing us just slightly. It's familiar enough, but it's a little bit different. And it's an Italian wine that's kind of going to get us set in the mood of like where we're going through this tasting. The next one we're going to talk about is this Griffin Sangiovese. I added this one because it's a lighter red. It feels very similar. Again, it's like giving Cabernet, but it can branch you out into something that is really common for you to find at a wine store, but maybe you don't reach for that often. Very similar to Chianti, a good dinner wine that can also be drank by the glass, but just expanding the horizons a little bit while staying in that Italian wine sector. Okay, then we're switching gears. We did a white wine. You gotta. Not everyone is just red, and we're doing a wine tasting. So we did this Edna Valley Chardonnay. Now, the reason I picked this one is because it's a personal favorite. Not this wine specifically, but unoaked Chardonnays, which is exactly what this is. A Napa Valley unoaked Chardonnay. Get into it, people. Crisp and deep, but not so heavy butter bomb like a traditional Chardonnay is. It's a white wine that takes people who don't like white wine and changes their mind, or at least gets them to think about ordering this as an appropriate meal pairing when they're going out and having pasta, chicken, fish. Now, I really wanted to add a wild card into this tasting. And my wild card is this Lambrusco. Now this is a sparkling red wine. It's just slightly sweet, but it's something that kind of like shifts it. And it's a party, okay? we gotta have some bubbles in there. And if we're gonna stick to a little bit more of a red, everyone loves a Prosecco. And trust me, if I know this group, they love a spritz. They all know a good Prosecco. They love it. They've been there before. Let's switch it up. Let's show you something different and add a little fun to the party. Then I did 2 wines to go with the meal afterwards. So after the tasting, that way everyone can kind of have their stomachs settle a little bit. We're doing a full meal. And to go with the meal, we did the whole group's favorite, a classic Cabernet. This is a Napa Valley Cabernet from Reputation. This is our comfort wine zone that I'm just going to put everyone right back in because they might have something from this tasting that they really loved that they can go back to now. But I wanted a tried and true that everyone could enjoy with dinner, especially the birthday girl. And this one specifically, it's dark, chocolate, rich. It's going to go perfectly with this bolognese lasagna. It's very cozy, and I think that's perfect for the vibes of this meal. And finally, you need a wine to go with dessert. A little Sauternes. She's cute, right? Think honey, apricot, golden vibes. It's going to be a perfect balance to go with the rich, deep espresso flavor of the tiramisu that I'm serving. I also chose to bring this to the party because people rarely get dessert wines. They sleep on them a lot, and I think it's because they think that they have to have a traditional glass size with it. And it's just something a little bit sweet to balance out salty, heavy cream, dark chocolate. It really rounds it out and adds a nice little fun pop to dessert. Plus, it's just kind of like an added addition to the tasting, something new. And if they don't like it, we're not wasting too much because dessert wine always comes in tiny bottles like this. Honestly, my goal with this wine tasting is really just to get everyone here to try something that they've never had before. And if they like it, it's an added bonus. All the specifics of these bottles I will put in the video description, but I heavily recommend trying what you find. Don't get too wrapped up in the specifics. And with that, it was time to pack it all up in my quintessential lasagna boat tote and head off for the best wine tasting you've ever seen in your life. With everything set up, we started our wine tasting. And let me tell you, this was not your traditional wine tasting, but everyone loved it. I took a break in the middle to make the polenta, make sure everything was good in the oven, and we had a delicious spread of food to make sure everyone wasn't full up on wine. This night was really why I love hosting. Laughs, fun, joy, bringing people together to celebrate. And if you made it this far, thank you for spending another night at the table with me and my chaotic sister, who I wish the happiest of 30th birthdays. I hope we will see you at the table again soon. Bye!
Happy birthday to